Welcome to the Mostly All Figured Out podcast with your host, Emily Rose. Regardless of the career field, the lifestyle, everyone is mostly figuring it all out. This podcast is where we pull back the veil of perfection and share true stories, experiences, encouragement, and of course failures, detailing how people just like you are making it all happen, despite the uncertainty, the fear, the imposter syndrome, the setbacks, the shame, whatever it is. If you believe there is more for you than what your life looks like right now, you're in the right place. Let's figure out our next steps together. Now let's get into the episode. Mostly all figured out. Shout out to Jill Fetcher for the idea for that one, to the tune of Most Girls by Haley Steinfeld. Welcome to the Mostly All Figured Out podcast with Emily Louie. If this is your first time here, congrats to you. I do make up my jingle every episode with whatever comes to my mind. This one became inspired by my previous guest last week. Thanks again, Joe. I am still fingers crossing it that my brother is going to remember that he told me he's going to make me a jingle. We'll get there. Just like with everything else, we'll get there. We'll figure it out. But I'm back in the library today. It feels like I'm screaming in my ears. Am I screaming in your ears?
No, you sound beautiful in my ears.
Okay. I love you so much. Well, I'm screaming in my own ears. That's all right. Still have this cold. The reason I still have this cold is because it's 2 days after I recorded the Jill episode. So once again, really sorry that I'm a bit scratchy. But it is what it is. It's January. Nope, it's February. It's February.
Nailing it.
We are doing it. So we're back in the library today with another guest and another American Cancer Society tie in the room. So I met this lovely lady back in 2014. You had been on staff, maybe like a month or two before me? Or longer than that?
No, I think a few more months, but yeah,
okay.
Not a long
maybe
time.
Like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
Someone I feel like Mariah, Kate, and I all came on at the same time.
Yes, that was a
triple threat.
Right?
Yeah, we just all came
and
in
the org
and changed
was
our
never
lives.
the same.
Yeah, never the same.
Take that what you will.
That's right. I'll take it. So we were both Relay for Life community managers and just rocking the relays across Western New York. And for me, it was love at first sight. I'll speak for myself. This human that you're about to hear has got to be one of the most empathetic, genuinely kind, caring, good advice giving, validating, wonderful human beings that I've ever met in my entire life. And I think most people who know her would agree with that, truly mean that. So today we're in for a real treat because we were talking about a kind of serious topic that I'm sure will be relatable for everyone. And we're talking about navigating change today and choosing yourself through change. So today, my guest is Missy Stolfi. Yay! Woo! Missy does not work at American Cancer Society anymore. You now work for
Make-A-Wish.
Make-A-Wish. Oh my God, why could I not remember the name of the organization?
I'm looking at,
see the logo, but this happened to me yesterday at the last interview. I could not remember the name of the agency that Jill worked at, even though I had done loads of research on it before and kept looking at it. It was suddenly like, wait, is it actually called that?
Well, and I'm looking at you and I was like, were you trying to remember or were you looking at me to jump in? No. So I went ahead and jumped in.
Thank you for jumping in because I don't know if you saw my eyes slowly shifting to panic. I was like, Disney. All I could picture was Disney.
It's more than just Disney.
It is so much more than that. And we could talk about that too, potentially. But tell me again what your title is. at Make-A-Wish?
Yeah, senior manager of brand communications and community engagement.
Excellent, excellent. Really could not think of a better job for you.
Thank you.
I think it's really wonderful that you get to do things like this with some really special kids and families. So
Absolutely. Thank
really
you.
awesome. Yeah. So let's start here.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give us some background on Missy Stolfi? Where did you begin? Are you from Buffalo?
I am not originally from Buffalo. I am someone who ended up in Buffalo because of family change, but and then later on chose Buffalo on purpose. So I was one of those who left, came back. But I started off born on Long Island. That's where all my family, all my roots are. Lived in the Philadelphia area as a kid growing up. And what brought us to Buffalo as a family, my mom got remarried when I was 13 to her high school sweetheart.
Oh my God.
Who was also from Long Island. That's where they grew up. But they had gotten back in touch after my parents split. He split, from his first wife, and they got back in touch years later, and he was in Buffalo working at UB. So that's what brought us all up here. That was my
I did not know that.
Yeah, my first ever plane trip ever was to come and visit and meet him. And it was March in whatever year, and it was freezing and miserable and gray, but it's like, hey, if you're going to meet Buffalo for the first time, at least, see it that way.
Yeah.
And so that's what brought us here. So I've, spent my high school and college years, in upstate New York, in, Western New York, and going to school. And after grad school, I decided I wanted a, quote, real city. Okay, so, at that point, I didn't have the appreciation for Buffalo that I did, right?
Well,
and
Buffalo
everything
was different then.
Buffalo was also different, right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like the kind of place that had as many kind of opportunities or was really embracing of young adults and young professionals. So I ended up back in Philadelphia. And so I'd gotten a master's degree in working in higher education and college student affairs. That was something that inspired me during my college career, including being a transfer student, all the ups and downs of being a college student, being really involved on campus, and then learning, okay, all the people who work on college campuses, how do they get their jobs, right? To be able to help and guide students through all of those transitions. And that's such a key, developmental time in their lives. And so, so that's what brought me to Philadelphia, where I worked for 2 different small private universities during my time there, and hit a third life crisis, we'll call it, when I turned 30. Just a lot had changed in terms of relationship, work satisfaction, burnout. And my mom said, she's like, just come home. So I put in notice and left an education job in the middle of the school year, and moved back in with my parents in Buffalo.
I love that so much. And I also feel like having that third life crisis at 30, it feels very relatable to me right now. I mean, I'm 33 now.
Yeah.
And I'll be 34 this year. And I feel that very strongly. That's things that you always hear people talk about, things like this. And then you get here and it's like, there's something about being at this stage where you're like, not a 20-year-old anymore.
Right.
But you're not a full-grown adult yet. Even though, I've had a child since I was 25, so I grew up a little bit faster, I guess, than most people do these days.
In their 20s, right?
Right, yeah. But I still, in a lot of ways, felt like a very young person during that time, just with a little kid. And it's interesting now because it's suddenly wow, a lot of my life is now done. And what do I think for me, I'm suddenly oh, maybe I have more power over what my life looks like than I thought originally.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I think with that time comes just a shift in perspective. And there's times looking back in my 20s, I spent a good amount of that time in, a serious relationship, and really just up to my eyeballs in my career, in education. And looking back, I wonder oh, what if I had embraced not sowing my wild oats necessarily, but being a little bit more, I don't know, laid back, a little more relaxed. I think I just put a lot on myself. Yeah. And I started in the field in 23, as soon as I graduated with my master's. And so I really grew up a lot during that time. And excuse me, being, in Philadelphia, being away from family, you
Yeah.
know, having to figure out a lot of stuff, you know, even though I was still remained really close with my family, they weren't like just down the street, right, for me to go to
Yeah.
with stuff. And so having to kind of figure some of that stuff out along the way. And I think the perspective I gained in my 30s and, you know, starting over in a number of ways at the age of 30, you know, physically being in a different place, you know, geographically, try to figure out what's next for my career, rebuilding relationships and friendships too, because I think that's all of that. That's a lot. And, you know, you would hear quarter life crisis and you hear midlife, but for me, it was really that third life, that range of like 29, 30, where everything was really starting to be like, oh God, I need to make some changes here. This isn't sustainable for me. I'm not happy. I'm not healthy. What do I want to be doing longer term?
Yeah. Well, I think too that our education system kind of sets us up to just like keep rolling and doing what we think we're supposed to do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like we just go from elementary school to high school to college to now graduate, you know, get our masters, and then we need to just get right into a job and then just like keep it moving, right? So I always wonder about like the people who take a year off and like travel or, you know, go to like a trade school or, you know, take that time. Like why was their mindset in that place? And why would never even have imagined doing that. And I think to some level, maybe younger Emily would have been like, well, you don't have the ability to do that. Right. You know, like some of that is about having the privilege and the ability to like afford doing something like that, you know. So I think part of it maybe too is like scarcity mindset and feeling like I have to make sure my bills are paid. Like I'm gonna get a family eventually, so I gotta like have a job and I have to have a house and we have to like. And I think for me, like especially now, seeing the way that my life has panned out, not the way that I thought it would, you know, from college Emily's perspective.
Oh yeah,
it's like. No, you actually don't have to do anything. You can do it however you want. You have to be calculated about it, obviously, and you do have to make sure your bills are paid. But it doesn't have to be this like cookie cutter way that we've always been told it needs to be.
And I think that I fed into a lot of that, you know, that expectation around this is what you do. You go to school and then you go to college and, you know, even the whole like, do what you love and study something that's, you know, this was before everyone really started emphasizing the like go into STEM or go into business, right? So I started off as a history major. I thought, excuse me, that I would go and become a history teacher. And then I realized that's not exactly what I wanted to do. But I think working in the education field, working with college students, I don't know, looking back, I feel like I kind of fed into that whole machine of like young people being told from the earliest possible ages, you're going to go right into college, you pick a major. I worked with students. It was a design-focused college, and other like really more specialized majors as well. Like you didn't have just like English majors, you know? And so everybody came in really focused on not just like what my major is, but what I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. And I was like, I admired that, but it put a lot of pressure on those students, and some of them struggled a lot, you know, when they realized that. You good?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I just got like a tickle that. We're having some technical difficulties over here. I'm sorry about the cough.
We're
we
rolling.
also just recorded a little bit, and it just stopped as soon as Missy started talking.
It's fine.
It's like, no. So anyways, back to you.
Yeah, no problem. So anyway, just going back to, I could see from a lot of the students I worked with that the pressure they put on themselves or that externally was being placed on them or a combination, if they realized they had to change their mind for any number of reasons about their career path, their major, it was very overwhelming to be like, well, what do I do now? You put all those eggs in that basket, right? And you built up an identity around, I'm going to be this future X, Y, or Z. And so I could relate to that. And yeah.
That's especially intimidating for like, you know, we're talking like an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, like who maybe took out a bunch of loans, maybe their parents, like their entire lives saved for them to be able to do this. Like that is a really tough time to be like, oh, shoot.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
want to do this. You know, it's wild that we put that pressure on very young people to figure it out.
And I felt like in a weird way too, looking back, I was helping apply that pressure. Meanwhile, I was struggling paying my own loans. And so, and I loved so much of that time though. And there's so much I did gain and grow from, but I hit a point though where it wasn't going to be for me anymore. But the problem is I didn't know what to do next. And when you're 30, it's not cute to not have health insurance or, you know, steady employment, or it's not something that you're like, oh, I have this master's degree and I had this like title that looked really great on paper, but I was miserable and now I'm going to move back to my parents' house, right? So there was something that felt also embarrassing. It took a bit for me to feel like comfortable with being able to say like, this is what I'm doing now, or because when you check in with everyone, you run into people or they ask how things are going. Everyone was really supportive for the most part of me saying, I want to go back to being closer to my family. I really feel this urge to move back to Buffalo. There was one person who had been a source of stress for me in my job who wasn't supportive and who didn't think it made sense, especially if I would damage myself in that field. But I was like, I don't even know if I want to stay in this field, right? And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to land where I'm supposed to. And I had to keep saying that to myself until I believed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you think your confidence in your own intuition and gut and your ability to bounce back comes from?
I think so much of that comes from my mom, which I know is something, you know, we say, but
I love that.
She's the one, you know, over the years and continues to keep checking in with me and my sister and holds us accountable to ourselves too. Like she'll be blunt with us about things. And so when we need that kind of kick in the pants, because she's, as she always says, she's like, I want better for you, you know? And so when we're not doing ourselves favors or we kind of can tell things aren't great, but you kind of feel stuck in that rut and you're not really sure and you need help to get some momentum going. My mom is famous for saying too, she's like, you never stop raising your children just because they're 18 or they've graduated or bought a house, whatever, married, you don't stop raising your children. And so, and I think, you know, having somebody like that who can reflect back, who knows you so well and can see like, okay, but when it comes down to it, it's still up to me to actually like, you know, press go. And whatever that change would be. And, you know, knowing that I have people in my corner too, I think that I have people like you who have always been so encouraging and affirming. I am always someone who tries to hype up the people in my life. And
you do it well.
Thank you. And so I think every so often having to be reminded, however, you know, that comes up is that I need to turn some of that around on myself, right? And so, you know, those Missy life speeches that I give, especially when I've had a little wine, my famous, my patented Missy life speeches, I'm like, I need to give some of those to myself. And so, and it's a constant reminder. I think anything when it comes to like taking care, making those changes, making those big decisions is you have to constantly exercise and practice it. It's like anything that, you know, it's like any kind of a workout. Like you don't just run, you know, around the block once and you're ready for a marathon. Like you have to train. Yeah. You have to train yourself, right? And so
absolutely.
It's so when it comes to doing things that are right for you, even if they feel scary or they feel uncertain, you still have to continue to practice doing that.
Yeah.
It never gets easy. It may get easier, but it never gets easy, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. I think it helps that you have. Well, so let's go back to your story here. Yeah. So you moved to Buffalo. Yeah. No job, living with your parents. Yeah. Like, okay. Yeah. What do I do now? So what happened next?
So what happened next is I was applying for jobs. I applied for some higher ed jobs in the area here, just trying to figure out, like, is this, well, maybe if something pops up that looks good. I was looking at all sorts of random stuff. I was applying at jobs that were more like retail or like things like hospitality, and I started looking at nonprofit jobs because I just didn't know. And I, you know, we know about transferable skills, of course, but I didn't feel very confident, you know, as to who's going to take a chance on me, right? Because I was in a pretty niche kind of, you know, field, and I was just tired and everything. So, the big thing, my parents, I was like, all right, you can stay here with us and while you kind of figure things out, but you need a job, you need to be able to, pay for your car and, pay your student loans, and you need health insurance, right? So I got a job, actually worked at Starbucks. And so I worked there for about 9 months while I continued just kind of keeping an eye out for job opportunities. And it was amazing. It was there right when I needed it. It was, steady work. I was working with people. I was starting to like meet people and make friends again, because the thing is too, is like when you up and leave and change your geography like that as an adult, a lot of the people and friends you tend to meet as you get older tend to be through work settings, right? Like that's how we became really good friends. And so, and I didn't have kids, so it wasn't like I was like meeting, other moms at the PTA or things like that. And so, I had to start that was an area too, I had to start over and make changes, because like you could keep in touch with people from Philly, but even Buffalo, like, a lot of people kind of come and gone. And so I'd stayed somewhat in touch, but, just even reconnecting too. And we know that's harder to do as you get older. And so, just being able to create, again, a social network for myself. And so getting to do that, having a job where I showed up at a specific time, I was guaranteed a lunch break, and then I went home at the end, is huge. I needed that because the job, being in higher ed, I've been working so many crazy hours, and it just bled so much, into my personal life, and I was just exhausted. So that was super helpful. But I kept looking to see, I'm like, all right, longer term. I was like, I could do this for a while, but also longer term, I'm like, I feel like something else for myself. And then the opportunity came up at the American Cancer Society. and it was to work with the Relay for Life portfolio of events. And I had been involved with that at the college level, helping students to create a campus walk, at our school. And so I was like, I've done that from the volunteer side. I'm like, that'd be really cool to do that. And so that's what really brought me into the nonprofit fold, and working in events, working with volunteers, working with community partners, all of that, working within, tight budgets. So there were so many things that, being mission driven, so many parallels to student affairs and to the work I was doing, with campus activities and leadership and all that kind of stuff. So, it was a very natural transition for me. And that's, I've continued in that field, through several different organizations and, different lengths of time and, types of roles and everything too, and continue to build upon that. But, part of it too is recognizing that, like, when your time at a particular organization or with a particular type of work is, okay, maybe it's my time, maybe it's a little overdue of my time and I should look for something different, or is this the right place? And so even though I've felt that like I've found more of like a home again in terms of a particular field, that still has taken a lot of change, and having to keep an eye out for like, is this still serving me too? Yeah. Am I putting too much? Am I letting it take too much? So I feel like every position or every, thing I've gotten involved in, I learn more. I learn more and more. I learn how do I do a little bit better in terms of taking care of myself, or not let certain things bother me, which obviously is like easier said than done, but being able to maybe let certain stuff go and have that confidence. And, sometimes too, your confidence gets shaken along the way. So it doesn't matter how seasoned you are, right, as a professional.
Right, yeah. Starting something new is always triggers that a little bit of imposter syndrome. And,
all the time. Yeah. And, and still like, being newer in my current role too is there's always that, because I think part of it too is because you care. You want to do a good job. You want people to look and be like, all right, we made the right decision with you. We can rely on you. You're going to deliver. You're going to bring, what is needed to the table. And so I feel that's never going to go away. I think there's certain stuff I need to just accept. Is that there's going to be some stuff will never fully go away, but it's more just kind of leaning and embracing it. Like, I'm going to always have those little degrees of, did I make the right move, or second guessing if I did something right, or, oh, okay, maybe I should have said it this way. And, thinking back to conversations or an email that you sent. And I think, but being able to like have that moment, but then like kind of just push it aside. Yeah. Instead of beating myself up over the fact I had those moments of doubt.
Right. Yes.
Acknowledge them.
Right.
But like not get consumed
lost
by
in them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it helps to like, for me, it helps to think I've been through this scenario before. and everything is fine.
think,
And I've like forgotten about it, you know, and just like keep that moving forward mentality. And I think, you know, I think when you made that major change when you were having your third life crisis, you have that proof that you can look back on now and say, I can make these difficult changes and survive and then eventually thrive through them.
Right.
You know,
and
you have the evidence.
Exactly. And I was able to do that because I had support. And I recognize like that's not a given for people, right? But I had support, and thank goodness I did, because I had like no money. I had no savings. I was getting paid not great, and you know, living in a major city in Philadelphia and everything. So that was the other thing too, is I also didn't have a ton of choice, because it wasn't sustainable what I was doing as far as like just the workload and, you know, trying to survive on that salary, all of that kind of thing. So, so while I was so fortunate that I had, you know, a family who I loved and like being around, that was willing to, you know, take me in for a while I kind of got my feet under me. Part of it too is like I did feel in some ways like a failure, you know. I felt like disappointed that what I thought I'd be doing the rest of my life wasn't necessarily panning out that way. I thought I'd live in Philly forever. I still love that place so much. Go Eagles. So excited for the Super Bowl.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm going in a couple weeks, so I'm really excited.
You're going to love it. So we'll have to talk about that too, and what you're going to be doing there. But so I mean, I had to grapple with, you know.
It's almost like a grief process of like the life that you thought you were going to have, you realize is not the one for you.
Right. And I put in a ton into my work, into relationships and everything there too. And so to feel like, you know, saying goodbye to those things in a way, right? And and just the life there that and I think anytime when you say goodbye to a job or a relationship, even if it is you know, for all the right reasons, there is that little bit of like kind of a mourning period, because it's important to you, right?
Absolutely.
Because you at one point you did choose it, and then you're like, have sometimes those moments of like, did I make the wrong choice, or I love this, but I need, you know, to take on this new opportunity, right? So even if it's a really great, exciting kind of thing that's coming next, you still feel a little bit like, oh, and I think too is just comes with, I think, having a lot of feelings. So I think it comes from people pleasing as well, which I think is something I've also always just really battled with when it comes to navigating change, is that like having to make a decision, but then feeling like, am I going to let somebody down? Am I going to make them upset because I made this choice, right? Do
you feel like there was ever a time in your life where, because especially maybe not exclusively because of that factor, but for whatever reason you didn't make the change either at all or as soon as you would have liked to if you, you know, had followed your gut?
Yeah, I think there's been like romantic relationships that I've had that, like, looking back, I should have nipped them in the bud sooner too. I think you get, whether it is, you know, a position, whether it is a living situation, whether it is a relationship, you know, and a relationship can mean any number of things. It could be a family member, it can be a romantic interest, it could be a friendship, you know, where sometimes some of them just run their course, right? And so, and it might be making that change maybe actually overdue, not just like recognizing, okay, I think it's time for us to kind of part or move on or change our dynamic. Sometimes it's overdue, and when you look back, you're like, I should have, right? But I think you get, things are familiar, you have routines. Sometimes you have like almost lack of momentum, you know? And so, you know, so there's definitely been times like that where you look back and think, I could have ended that sooner. Or I could have maybe left that job a little sooner, when you start to think of like, all right, the writing was kind of on the wall maybe for some time, but I wasn't seeing it, or I wasn't feeling it, or which is okay. And I think those are times too where you do feel some guilt. And you kind of beat yourself up a little bit too, because you're like, all right, what could I have done with that time or energy that was spent on that, right?
Right. And you'll never know, ultimately.
Which is a useless exercise.
It's a useless exercise. And I think ultimately, like, what we all need to try to have as more of a priority and practice in our daily lives is grounding and connecting with ourselves. Because when we're in the thick of it, that's a concept that's so interesting to me, that like you can experience a change and then on the other side of it be like, whoa, like suddenly see it so much clearer and be like, why was I letting that happen for so long? Like, why did I stay there in that place for so long? It was so clearly wrong for me from the beginning or from the middle or whatever point, you know, but it is so hard. It can be so hard because for whatever reason, you're consumed in like pleasing another person. You're consumed in this ideal of like what life is supposed to be like. You know, you're consumed in whatever.
What are people going to think? And,
Right,
you know,
right.
having to like explain all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the fear of like, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if like, what are people going to think of me? Like, you know, all of that can be so all consuming, especially if you don't have a regular practice of connecting with yourself, whether that's journaling or therapy or meditation or taking a walk in the park or whatever, you know, where it's just you and quiet.
Right.
You know, and your opportunity to hear your own self. It can be so clouded. And so I think for so many people, that's a concept that is just like hard to even understand, you know, which is really sad.
And like it has to be something that is a practice. It needs.
Absolutely.
It never, like I said, it never gets easier.
Yeah.
Or it never gets easy. I guess it gets easier because you can kind of like lean into the changes and know, like you said, I've been here before. I've been through something like this before where I felt really like overwhelmed or upset or scared or angry or whatever it might have been. And I got through and I got on the other side and I'm living proof, right? And so, okay, I've done those hard things before. So, so those things do help make it a little easier because you at least have like a track record to go off of. But they're not always obvious, you know? So like you said, sometimes you still get caught up and then you have that moment of like, oh God, why did I like let it drag on this long?
Yeah.
And I think, and even when you make that decision that, okay, I'm going to make this change and I'm going to go for it. You don't magically feel like everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like you still can struggle with the feelings of questioning it or being afraid of what comes or, okay, I'm going to do this thing, but how do I actually logistically go about it, right?
Right.
Is like, all right, I'm going to leave this job, but what job am I going to do next?
Right.
Or
The
I'm going to
transition is the messy
leave,
part.
yeah, I'm going to leave this house, but where do I live next? And whatever it might be, or I'm going to move or whatever it might, you know, whatever the situation is. And so I think that's okay, is just to remember, like, it's all right if like you make a decision, it doesn't feel like magically the sky's open. Like it's not necessarily, epiphanies aren't always just like clean. They can still feel kind of messy. And so I think just giving myself a little more grace with that has helped over the years too, is because like you still question like, all right, I'm going to do this thing, but is it the right thing in the end? Like, so it's okay to still battle that a bit.
For sure. What advice, this will be the last question before our rapid fire.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who right now is deciding whether to make one of those big changes, whether it's changing a job, changing a career, changing a city, changing a relationship, letting go of a relationship, you know, whatever it may be, starting something new that seems scary, investing in something that seems a little bit scary but would maybe like be something they really love. What advice would you give to someone who is like considering doing something like that for whatever reason, they're feeling the urge to make this change but also feels all of the feelings?
Whew, that's big. I think take some time to just sit with yourself about it. I think getting advice from people and asking like people who know or listening and then just take and sit with that a bit. I think sometimes we feel like, all right, this isn't working. I need to like hurry up and have an answer or figure out. And I don't know that's necessarily the case. Is that it's okay to like take a beat. But not get stuck in the thinking part, if that makes sense. So there's an in-between. I think think it through, and you don't want to just like have like a, you know, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but you know, where you're just like the
spontaneous, like instant gratification.
Yeah, or just feel like, all right, I have to do something, right? And just rush into something too. And you want to think through, especially as you get older and there's, you know, more and more kind of consequences like financial or other, you know. But I think But when it comes down to it, you still have to take a step. And I think that's the other piece of advice is think it through, but then take a step, even if it seems tiny. Even if the step is, I'm going to tell one person, this is what I'm doing now, right? To say it out loud, it feels more real.
Absolutely.
Or do one little piece of research towards what you want, your next step to be. So start somewhere. I think then that helps with the whole like actual forward momentum with it, because otherwise it's really easy, and I've been in that place too, where you get overwhelmed by the thinking about it, and then you're like, I don't know where to start, and so I don't do anything. And it's just more time is passing, right? In this situation that feels no longer like it serves you. So
and I think I think a lot of people tend to fall in one of the two camps of either like, I got to do this now, or I'm going to figure this out.
And then it's like 6 months go by and I'm still doing the exact same things and not happy about it. So you know where you fall in that camp. For me, I'm definitely one of those like, I got to do it now type of people. But like the truth is, as long as you're not in imminent danger. Correct. Yes.
And I think you do not.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like if you're in imminent danger, then yes, you need to make, you need to make
it's a different circumstance.
Correct. Yeah. But, you don't have to have the entire plan mapped out, but to at least start making some forward progress, even if it's small. Is then you're going to start to feel a little bit more, a little stronger. A little more resolve in that decision. So those are things that I've found have been helpful. So whether it is that, just talking to one person or making a list and then starting to do the one thing on the list. Then you're like, all right, here we go, a little bit of progress, and it's starting to, nudge the, boulder up the hill. So I think that's something too, is start somewhere.
I would call that, well, I don't know if I would call that, but in the law of attraction and that world, you would call that inspired action, right? Taking an inspired action, a step that says to the universe, okay, I really mean it. I'm really interested in like pursuing this path. You put this desire in my heart for whatever reason. I hear you. I'm taking the first step. Please guide me to the next step after that. You know?
Exactly. You don't have to have the whole map.
Just take step number one.
None of us have the whole map.
No.
There's no map.
We're mostly all figured out. There is no map. There's no map. All right, let's get into some fun rapid fire questions.
Oh dear. Am I ready for this?
Here we go. You're ready. You are so ready. I do have, so these are the same ones that I had for my other guests.
Great.
There's too many. Okay. So I'm going to like cut them down and change them a little, maybe for the next interview. But you're going to get the OG question.
Let's do it.
Okay. Question number 1. Healthy habit you always stick to.
Always?
Yeah.
None of them. If I'm being honest.
I mean, you always sleep every night.
That's true. I go to bed at a reasonable hour. I take my medications.
You do.
Like, there we go.
So
I wash my hands. Thank you for giving me. Thanks for validating me.
You do a lot of healthy habits. I think when we hear that phrase, we think like working out
like
and
juicing.
Like gratitude every day, like juicing, like serious things. But like we're really doing healthy habits every day.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. You're doing great.
I appreciate it.
Healthy habit you're trying to implement.
Yeah, so that's something. This past month, I was starting to do dry January, which, as
Jill
well
was
as
too.
and then doing some regular yoga.
Nice.
And I've really been, keeping and maintaining well. Dry January in the sense that for about 3 weeks I went without drinking anything, which was big for me.
That is big.
I have since started to have a few beverages, but I'm not keeping anything in home either. And so just trying to keep like more like level, there. And then the yoga too is, and not pressuring myself to maintain the yoga. Originally it was like a 30-day challenge kind of thing, but not feeling like, okay, I have to do it every single day, but doing just that even just the showing up on the mat, like the instructor says, like, you know, was the hard part. And I was
Totally.
just like, all right. And I think just leaning into that aspect of it.
I love it.
You know, so.
What program are you doing?
Yoga with Adrian.
Oh, I love her.
I know. So I did her 30-day center challenge.
This is my first year not doing her January 30 day.
So it was funny because when I shared like on my like Instagram story that I was starting it, I had like a number of people being like, oh my God, I love her. I do it every year.
Her. I
And
always
so
do.
I had done one of her classes on YouTube like a million years ago before and loved it. And so I don't even know how it came up in my thread or feed, or I don't even know like that it was coming up.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's do it.
Yes.
And I'm just really glad. And I want to just continue working with, you know, what she's doing and set up space in my house where I can do it. And
I love that.
yeah, so I'm really proud that I've stuck to it as much as I have. You know?
It's huge.
Yeah.
And she's great because she does a new calendar for each month throughout the year.
Right.
So.
And also too, like she's someone who like, she's this like little, you know, thin thing, but like she's so affirming and
very affirming,
you know,
makes it very accessible.
She does. She's really makes it
comfortable.
approachable and about like modifications, and like I don't feel pressured. I feel encouraged but not pressured.
Yes.
You know, to like be a certain way with it. So that's something I really appreciate about her too.
She taught me yoga. Like I really wanted to get into yoga, and I was so intimidated by classes. And I think about this all the time. I don't know if this studio exists still. Actually, I haven't heard stuff from them since the pandemic, but I remember being surrounded by like a group of women and mentioning like, oh, I started doing yoga with Adrian. And granted, this woman like owns a studio, so I'm sure she feels the type of way about people who do free yoga classes online. But like she kind of like chuckled at me, and I was like,
right.
So offended by that, because that's not what yoga is supposed to be. Like it's not.
Yeah,
it
like don't
have to
gatekeep
be, like,
it. Right.
Sweating and like, ugh, you know.
Well, and
I
that
mean?
exactly. And I think where people are doing it for like pure, just like fitness and tightness, and that's the thing is like I think again like her as like a white woman doing this to like honor.
She's actually not white.
Oh, that's right.
She's Hispanic.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Actually, I was like thinking through. I'm like, no, but as a lighter skinned person, and you know, not coming necessarily from like South Asia and everything, right?
Yeah.
Is that you know, that she really honors like the practice and you know the spirituality behind it too.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's like I really appreciate. Is,
Absolutely.
Too about her, that it's not just this co-opted like get fit kind of a thing, but it's just about the well-roundedness of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
She got me through the sleep deprivation of Eli, because that was when it was 7 months in of that. Then I was like, oh, I'm going to do this yoga thing for myself because I'm going to do it. And I did all 30 days.
Right.
And I look back at that all the time now, and I'm like, I can do hard things.
Yeah.
I can do hard things.
Yeah.
I love yoga with Adrian. Okay, question number 3. Nonprofit you love and support.
Oh my gosh, I'm actually really excited to share that I'm just joining the board now for a nonprofit. So through I've been going to Trinity Buffalo Church for the past like year or so, and they actually founded Compass House, which is provides emergency shelter and resources, including like rapid rehousing, transitional services for youth who are ages like 12 to 24 who have either run away or experiencing homelessness. And so they actually founded Compass House back in the 70s. And so I've always had representation on their board. And so my pastor actually asked if I'd like to step up into that role for Trinity. And it's an organization I've, you know, admired and, you know, knew about in the area. And so, so I'm actually really excited to, you know, there's so many amazing nonprofits in, you know, Western New York, and of course ones that I've been lucky to be a part of the mission as staff and serve as volunteers over the years. But like what's kind of fresh on my mind too right now is getting to step into this role. Yeah. So more to come there. Yeah.
Very exciting. Favorite thing that you make?
That I make? I really love making casseroles, and so anything, especially the more cheese, the better, and it gets all bubbly and like little crust on the side. And so, and I've just been trying to, you know, I have some tried and true things that I really like. Anything that can be made in like a Pyrex dish, essentially. So I like trying new stuff, but then, you know, old go-tos, whether it's like mac and cheese, I make enchiladas. I made like a stuffed pepper casserole recently.
Ooh,
yeah,
I'm gonna need that recipe.
Yeah, it was really good. And so, and I just love. And then, you know, I can like divide it up and put some in the freezer and that kind of thing. So that's my favorite thing, is making that. And I also love, on top of my I have one of those griddle things on the top of my newer stove.
Love
so
it.
I make a lot of grilled cheese and quesadillas on that thing. So basically anything that's like involves cheese melting. Those are my faves.
Here for it. We had grilled cheese last night. Yes, last night, and tomato soup.
Yep.
So good.
Never a bad move.
When you're not doing dry January, what's your go-to night out drink?
Cabernet. Specifically, Josh Cabernet is my fave.
Oh, Josh is so good.
I just hit my microphone.
Do you know where I just had Josh? A place that you would never guess has Josh Cabernet.
Chili's.
No.
They do.
Is that where you had? Because I saw you were just at Chili's.
I love Chili's. Yes.
Chili's. No, Lasertron.
Stop it. Okay, classy.
I was there for a birthday party.
Yeah.
And with some parent friends. And we were like, yeah, let's get some wine, and they had Josh Cabernet, so I was like, all right, cool,
There you go.
Totally great.
Also Chili's.
And Chili's. So there you go. Favorite affirmation.
Oh Jesus.
Yep.
I don't know.
Or what do you tell? I don't know. What do you tell yourself when you're in a challenging situation and you're like, ugh? Like what do you tell yourself to help yourself like push through a hard thing?
I think one thing, like, especially when you find yourself in the middle of the night when you like wake up and things are in your mind and you're worrying through things, as a lot of times I just tell myself there's nothing I can do about it in this moment. That's something I'll tell myself often, especially if it's like work or talking to somebody or whatever. It's like, all right, everyone's sleeping, offices are closed, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's literally nothing's gonna really, for the most part, things aren't really gonna get changed or impacted, or nothing's gonna happen with that right this moment.
Right.
So just, it's, the day will start and then you can tackle whatever it is, but like there's nothing I can do about it right now.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's just in general is sometimes when you do something, you're like, all right, it's kind of out of my hands. When you have done something, maybe you're waiting on response or you're waiting to see what someone will say or what have you. It's just like, all right, I've done what I can and I got to just wait.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers that.
No, it does. I love that. I use that a lot. And it reminds me of something that I've been telling Jax a lot lately because he's for whatever reason, I mean, he's in second grade and he's already nervous about his friends being at different high schools than him.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, Jax, I was driving with him after picking him up yesterday from school. I was like, Jax, buddy, like, you're worried about something right now that is not even real.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened. And it might not.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm going to go to high school. I was like, yes, you are going to go to high school.
Yeah.
But you don't know what friends are going to come to the same one as you.
You'll tackle it when it happens.
Exactly. Right.
Or if it
right
happens.
Now,
there's nothing
you can do about it right now.
Exactly.
There's just nothing. So, all it's doing for you is giving you a hard time on the inside.
Taking your piece.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think he understands that concept yet, so I have to keep working on it.
Yeah, but you're introducing the concept.
We're starting. Yeah, we're trying.
Such a tender heart.
He has the tenderest heart. Podcast you highly recommend?
So it's actually really funny. I'm not a podcast person.
Interesting.
Believe it or not. So
interesting.
Yeah,
okay. Well,
yeah.
You can say mostly I'll figure it out.
So I mean, what other podcast is there really?
This is the one.
Yeah. No, but that's what I wish I was. I wish I was. The thing is, I'll listen to stuff and then I don't keep up with them.
Yeah.
One though, I
haven't found the right one yet.
Yeah. One I like though is that Morgan Harper Nichols has like a daily kind of like, and it's usually just like a few minutes, and it's almost like a statement or like an intention or affirmation for the day.
Oh.
So that's one that like I've listened to a few times too.
I would love that.
And I have like notifications will pop on my Spotify that there's a new one, and so even if I don't like listen to them, I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, like she's got it. Because I just really love her and her work. So I'll send that to you. But no, I wish I was more of a podcast person, which I know is a terrible thing to say as a podcast guest. But yeah, I don't keep up with. I don't keep up with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's, there's
like when people tell me like I have to watch movies and I'm like, I'll put it on the list. There's no list. I keep up with TV shows, but for some reason I don't keep up with movies.
I can't keep up with TV shows or movies because my time with the television is so short.
Right.
And it's like the end of the day when I'm so tired anyway.
Yeah.
So those are just not possible. But podcasts are easy for me because I can do other things while I'm listening to them.
And you know what, too? I'm not a very auditory person. That's the other thing too. Like books on tape and all that, like don't really work as much for me. Yeah. So that's the thing. I'm much more of like a reader of like, articles and like that kind of stuff. And,
Gotcha.
if I'm keeping up with things that are more like, current or,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it too, is just how I take in communication.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. I'll allow it. All the music in the world is gone except for the music from one artist or band. Who would you pick?
Smashing Pumpkins.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're still like my all-time faves from, going back to my adolescence. So,
I love
yeah,
that.
it'll be like all the old school Pumpkin stuff that I grew up with that I still love.
I love that so much. I've gone down like a nostalgic path lately with music for whatever reason. I think it's just my life for some reason is giving me all these feels. And I have been like jamming to Fall Out Boy lately.
Yes.
Oh my God. It just like gives you all these feelings.
Exactly. Because it brings you back. And there's actually like a science behind why the music that you kind of grow up with and like why what you listen to in high school is still so important to you. And like no matter what your generation is, you know, because, growing up, our parents were still listening to a lot of the stuff that, and you're like, ugh, when I'm older, I'm going to listen to different stuff.
Right.
And I do. But I also, it's still going to always have a significance and it's going to resonate with you in a way that nothing else ever will.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What is a hobby or interest you have that most people wouldn't know about you?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I feel like people do. I get pretty excited about like the interests I have, even if it's like silly little things.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think that they might not know about me. Gosh, that's a tough one because I feel.
I know you are because you do share.
I do share. Yeah, I do share.
You're not like you're not a closed book. You're an open book.
I'm pretty open. Well, it's funny too, but I'm like I am and I'm not. Like I feel like emotionally I'm not.
Sure.
But yeah, in terms of interests, I don't know. I have to go back to that.
Okay.
I'd have to think on that.
All right, we'll circle back with you.
If there's anything fresh.
Favorite place you ever visited?
Oh, wow. Other than the Central Library of the Buffalo Public Library with you in Studio 2.
It's pretty impressive.
It is really hard.
I know.
One thing that really jumps out is a couple things. New Orleans, going to Yankee Stadium, both the old and the new ones. I think... Obviously, anytime I go back to Philadelphia, I love that. I don't know. I don't have like one set place. I like, and including, I like also just even little pockets of places. Like it doesn't have to be somewhere like it's a big dramatic trip, too.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be in Europe or something like that.
Yeah, right. It doesn't have to be some grand tour. I didn't like, climb the pyramids or something like that,
Right, yeah.
But yeah, if we're talking about like kind of maybe like a city or a destination, I would say probably like New Orleans would be one that jumps to mind.
Love it.
Yeah.
Last question. Will the Bills win the Super Bowl in 2024?
I noticed you had to update the number.
I did.
What I'll say, and this year taught us that, is anything is possible in this world.
Yeah.
How's that for a non-answer answer?
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Missy Stolfi, thank you so much.
Emily Louie, thank you so much.
I'm so happy you came in today.
Real treat.
A real humdinger of an experience. I'm just so grateful. And I'm so grateful for all of you who have listened, whether you're podcast people or not. Thank you for tuning in for the lovely Missy. Please do follow at Mostly All Figured Out. I think it's just at Mostly All Figured Out. I don't even know my own handle, so
just start typing it in and it should show up.
It's in the show notes. Check that out. Is there anywhere you'd like to direct people to follow along with you, or?
I mean, I'm on Instagram at MissyCats2, the number 2.
It's true. She's great. She posts a lot more regularly than I do on Mostly All Figured Out, so you will get really good content to you. Educational content. Your stories are some of my favorite. They pop up regularly with the memes, but also stuff that's relevant to what's happening in our world, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've ever said that. I think I've said that to you before, but
that means a lot. Thank you.
Just to confirm, yeah. So yeah, follow us. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. When you subscribe, it really does help me. Yeah. And that's it. I hope you're warm. It's a very cold day that we are recording this. Another update. I know I just updated you 2 days ago for me, but the bug man is in the house right now. Actually, he might be done already. So great news. Those bed bugs about to be out. The problem is, though, they did tell me that I have to wait 4 more weeks before I bring a bed into the house. So I was devastated to hear that. But we're just going to keep moving forward into 2023. Here we go, 2 months in and no bed. But it's going to be fine. We've lived through worse. We've navigated worse things. Any other things that I have to share with you? No. If you are looking for event support or fundraising support, give me a call. I do have some room on my schedule to take on new clients, so would love to talk to you about that. And that's it. Have a great weekend, everybody, or week or day or whatever it is that you are listening to this, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, there's a few things you can do to really help your girl out. Please subscribe, rate the podcast, give me a little review. All those things really do help me in a lot of ways. And this year, I'm really trying to expand my reach. I'm trying to get this podcast in front of more people who might need it. My people, our people. So let's keep growing this beautiful community of nice people who are just trying to be their best selves. So if you know someone who might like it, please send them the link, share it in your stories, tag us, which is another thing you can do, actually. If you're not already, please follow us on Instagram at @mostlyallfiguredout. I've actually been very good about posting new episodes every Friday, so you can see who is up. You can get some little previews, sneak previews with some sound bites that we post throughout the week. And it really helps, again, in expanding our reach a little bit and getting us out there in front of more people. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. Love ya.